Hi, this is Peter Friedrich, and today we're speaking with Farouk Ahmed about the Kashmir issue. Farouk, I want to welcome you and thank you for your willingness to open up about your opinions in relation to what's happening in Kashmir right now, which is actually where you're from, isn't it?
Yes, I actually come from a very small town in northern Kashmir, from the district Baramulla. Uh, so I spent almost 25 years of my life in Kashmir, out of which almost 17 were during the conflict.
Now, this conflict in Kashmir has been ongoing. It began about 30 years ago in 1989, and really about 70 years ago in
Mhm.
1947. But what is it that is prompting you today to speak out? Why do you want to talk about Kashmir today?
Today, especially after the Indian government decided to scrap Article 370, and actually uh, that was the only thread holding on between India and Kashmir. If we go back and look at the history, and we see that the thread between India and Kashmir, the Indian administered part of Kashmir, was Article 370. So if we go back to the time when they signed the papers of accession, at that point of time, they decided that the Kashmiri government, the government of Jammu and Kashmir, they will make their own laws, and Indian government can do only a little bit. So that's how Article 370 came into being. So, and at this point of time, they just basically cut that thread. And Kashmiris have, I'm a Kashmiri. I know there is a lot of emotional attachment with the fact that there was this article. Now that they took it away, so that emotional, it has hurt Kashmiris emotionally. It's going to hurt them physically, because there is going to be a very, very big uprising, which I think. Uh, so this is really bad. I'm sure the Modi government, before doing all this, before taking this completely unlawful action, they knew what's going to happen. They must know that Kashmiris are not going to take it well. There are going to be casualties. There is going to be protests. There is going to be loss of life. But they still decided to go ahead with it. And this is just the beginning of, like, they are keeping the people under curfew right now. But how long can the curfew go on? The people will actually come out, and when they will come out on the streets, uh, it's all hell will break loose. And it hurts me very to say this, that at that point of time, it's the Kashmiri people who will actually be the casualties. So,
Now, you
because
mentioned,
there will be people, there will be some people with maybe stones, there will be people who will be protesting peacefully, and they are against almost 700,000 armed forces. So it's a no-brainer who is going to get hurt during those protests.
so Farouk, you have mentioned this curfew, and that's one of the major issues at the moment, is this ongoing blackout of communications in Kashmir. And in fact, I've
Mhm.
spoken with some Kashmiris, one Kashmiri, and I'm just reiterating what he said, but one Kashmiri actually told me along the lines of, go ahead, take my land, take anything you want, but just open up the phone line so we can speak with our families. Now,
Exactly. Exactly. That's what I'm going through right now. It is such a trauma. I'm going through such a psychological and emotional trauma, because I haven't been able to talk to my parents for almost 12 days now. And we are living in 2019. We have high-speed internet, and we have the latest mobile phone and landlines, telecom technology. But I haven't been able to contact my parents for the last 12 days. It's been 12 days. So I spoke to my father. I think it was fourth. Yeah, it was the Sunday before this whole Article 370 was done. When I talked to my dad, uh, I could sense that, I could feel that fear in his voice when he was talking to me. He straight away told me that the Indian government is going after Article 370, and this is not good. They don't know what they are messing with, because this is going to lead to a lot of, a lot of violence, a lot of protests, and a lot of, 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 a lot It's going to lead to bloodbath and violence, and this will increase violence. It's not going to decrease violence. I could sense it in his how the fear that I could sense in his voice. It still haunts me. It's been 12 days, and I have a routine now. I wake up in the morning. I try to call them. During the afternoon, I try to call them. Before going to bed, I try to call them. There's nothing. I don't know whether they are alive. I don't know how my grandmother is doing. So how my brother is doing, how my sister is doing. So it's very, very, very like, take any person in the world, you will cut them off from their family. You won't let them talk to them. How that person must be feeling. It's extremely emotional. I can't even talk about it because it takes me back to that last phone call that I had with my dad, and the way he was talking. That night, I actually thought about it. When I had the last conversation with my dad, I actually thought about it. Before going to bed, I thought, can Indian government do this? And I told myself, just to go to bed, I told myself that, no, they can't do this. This is 2019. There will be international pressure. There will be pressure from India. Like I have a lot of friends. Like most of my friends, my best friends are from the other states of India. They're not from Jammu and Kashmir. So I think about all those people. I thought there will be pressure from people like my friends, like the international community from media. But nothing like that has happened. Like I haven't seen till now anybody come out, like not even one person from Indian Delhi-based media who is a very well-known name, who would have said even at one time that this is an unlawful action, because this is undemocratic. This is not democratic. Maybe you are trying to portray it under the shadow of development, economic development, but it's unlawful. It's undemocratic.
So let me ask you about that, Farooq.
Sure.
As you've mentioned, this scrapping of the articles and the stripping of statehood, all of this has been done presumably in the name of development.
Mm-hmm.
And as you've just mentioned, you feel that it's an undemocratic action.
Yes, I do.
Now, as it's happened, one question and a second question. One question is, as this has happened, how do you feel about the prominence which has been given to the voices of Kashmiris in making these important decisions about the future of Kashmir? Do you feel that Kashmiri voices have been given prominence? And then the other question is, why do you think that this has happened? Why do you think that the Modi-led government has done this? What is their motivating factor?
Yeah, I would like to answer the second question first. I personally believe that, this is my personal opinion, that there's no good faith involved in it from the Modi government. They are just doing it to make their own voter base happy. That it's as plain as simple. I'm just putting it in the simplest of the words, that they are just doing it to make their voter base happy. That's it. There's nothing else that can justify that. If I go to the second aspect, second part of your question, the economic development aspect of this, they are trying to portray that we are trying to develop Kashmir economically. That is completely bogus, because Kashmir, if you see, is economically better than Prime Minister Modi's own state, where he comes from, where he was the chief minister of Gujarat. And Kashmir is, you see the numbers coming from Indian government. These are not my numbers. So the last numbers that came out, Kashmir was ahead of Gujarat, where that's the state that he comes from. And I would like to make one more point here, which is like more important to me. I don't care about economic development. According to me, you cannot barter basic human rights with economic development. They are trying to barter basic human rights at this point of time with human rights, which is Kashmiris. They have a right to speak, and they are not allowed to speak. They have cut down their communication, which is a basic human right, and they are trying to barter it with economic development, which is insane if anybody believes that that's the right way to do it. So the other thing, before they did this, if anybody, because my friends have been trying to justify this, oh, this is good for India, this is good for Kashmir, India is doing it because they are doing it in good faith. So if anything is done at any place in the world, if you have to keep 8 million people under curfew to take some action, there is something wrong with that act, the act that you are performing, and you have to keep 8 million people under house arrest. Basically, they are under curfew, and there is communication blockade. That means there is something wrong with that act that you are doing. So it's as simple as that. It's not rocket science. So I don't think that Kashmiris are given a voice at this point of time. I don't think there would have been a little bit of voice if the local journalists were given a little bit of leeway. They are not. The Delhi-based media is completely, they are spokespeople of Modi government. I haven't seen it hurts me. It hurts me because I studied journalism. It hurts me that there are journalists out there who are not going out there and reporting facts. They have an agenda. Okay, we have to portray this story that will suit Modi government. That's the whole thing. They will say one sentence, okay, Kashmiris are under curfew, but this is the next one thing will be, but it's for their own good. There will be economic development. So they don't care about the human rights violations. They just want to make Modi government happy. And
somebody who's studied journalism, you probably have an opinion on this. What is the purpose of journalism? Is the purpose of journalism and of media houses to propagate the government line?
Exactly. It's not. The purpose of journalism is to report facts. Right now, there are not even 2% facts reported by journalists. It is all editorial. It's all, they give their opinions rather than reporting the facts. Nobody is saying, you see it from my perspective. I haven't been able to get in touch with my family for 12 days. 12 days. If you are talking to me as a person about economic development, I'm not buying it. Doesn't matter what you show me. Doesn't matter the kind of numbers you give me, the kind of green pastures you show me. I'm not buying it because I haven't talked to my dad. I don't know whether he's alive. Right?
So, Farooq, one of the other Kashmiris that I've spoken with, one way that he phrased it was that the Indian government could go in and they could turn Kashmir into Manhattan. Mm-hmm. And there would still be protests on the streets the next day, despite this transformation into a rich, luxurious region. There would still be protests on the streets the next day. Mm-hmm. Now, as you've alluded to, as you've alluded to, the government can be taking these actions, but if it's not consulting the people, and if it's doing it unilaterally like this without listening to the voices of Kashmiris, will this development, even if that's sincerely what the government intends to do, if it actually comes about, will it make them happy if they continue to be treated in this manner?
I don't think. I agree with the person who said that if they transform it into Manhattan also, there will be protests because you haven't consulted the people. This is not democratic. There has to be a referendum. Simple. If you are doing anything with a state with a state like Kashmir, which had Article 370, which had special privileges, people need to have a voice. People need to speak up what they want. You can't do anything. That's like the jungle rule. That's the jungle law. That means one person in the jungle is powerful. He can do anything with anybody. That's what they are doing. This is complete jungle rule. The BJP is in power right now. They are doing anything. And then there is no opposition. Opposition is completely weak. They are spineless. They don't have a leader. So the BJP government knows that nobody is going to question them, or nobody is going to stand up against them because they're spineless. The others is spineless. So they're doing whatever they want to do. So this is complete jungle rule and jungle law, what they are doing right now in Kashmir and other parts of the India also.
In relation to this jungle rule that you're talking about in Kashmir, I would like to ask you about your own personal experiences and what it was like for you growing up in Kashmir, what it was like for you as a kid, as a young man in Kashmir, how the treatment was like by the security forces, and how your perception of freedom was shaped growing up there.
Oh, I'll give you a basically growing up in a conflict, especially for a kid, especially for any child, it's cruel, it's inhuman. So, and then the puppet masters who actually are creating these conflicts, they call this as collateral damage, which is actually you are hurting kids. Kids become the collateral damage in a conflict, according to me. So growing up in Kashmir was till I was 7. I had the best life. It was the best place in the world. It still is my favorite place. It's a place I call home. No matter where I go to New York, I go to California, I go to Europe. Where doesn't matter where I am, Kashmir is the home. That's where that's what I feel. That's what when I think about home, it's Kashmir. There cannot be another Kashmir in the world for me. Growing up till about 7 years was amazing. We have an amazing, rich culture, and the whole towns and whole villages live like one family. I love that about Kashmir. If one person is sick in a locality, everybody is going to take care of you. You're not on your own. I can't see that anywhere else in the world. I grew up in that sort of place, which I call home. But then once I turned 8 and this whole thing started, that it was a paradigm shift. So from living in heaven, it changed into complete hell. So now we were living in hell. There were restrictions, especially for us. We couldn't play outdoors too much. We had to come into the house very early in the evening. We saw bloodbath. We saw dead bodies. As seeing a dead body as a child is, I think, the worst thing, because it haunts you. Some of the scenes that I have witnessed in the 17 years of disturbance that I lived in Kashmir, they still haunt me to this day. I might be thousands of miles away from there, but they keep chasing me. They don't let go. It was they basically dent your psyche. They basically they hurt you. They hurt you, and it doesn't let go. These the memories that you have from that time. So now, if we talk in terms of freedom, I will just try to. When I was a child, we used to go to school, and they used to teach us democracy. What democracy means? It's the government of the people, for the people, by the people. So while at the same time, while I was learning what it means, it was during that time that there were these elections happening in Kashmir, and militancy was at its peak. Now a lot of Kashmiris, they didn't want to go out and vote. I witnessed this. I saw security forces come into our neighborhood and pull out people to vote. They pulled them out. They didn't want to go. So now it was not a government of the people, because they didn't want to vote. They were pulled to vote. They were forced to vote. For the kids of conflict, that's also one sort of like it. There is a conflict within you, because now in school you are learning that this is democracy, but what you are observing is completely different. So there are so many episodes like that. There was, in terms of the treatment, there was not good treatment always. Most of the time, there was decent treatment from security forces. I was beaten up myself many times. There were a lot of things that we wanted to do, we couldn't do because there are too many restrictions. So it's basically you are not living a free life. When like to mention this. When I used to go to school when the militancy was at its peak, so my mom would just say goodbye to me before I would leave. And at that point of time in Kashmir, when a mother or a father was saying goodbye to their children in the morning, they were not sure that the children are coming back in the evening. It was so bad. So every morning she would say goodbye to me. She was saying it thinking that maybe they won't come back. So that's how kids of children of conflict grow. You grow. I grew up under the shadow of a barrel of a gun. That's how I always saw guns. Before I knew what A is for apple and B for boy and ball or C for cat, I learned A is for ambush before I learned A was for apple, or B was for bomb, not for ball. C was for cordon. It was not for cat. So that's how the children of conflict grow. It's cruel, it's inhuman, and I know all the puppet masters, these kids and these conflict zones, they are pawns. Like Kashmir at this point of time, it's a pawn for the Indian government, it's a pawn for the Pakistani government. And who is suffering? It's us. It's my family who is living there right now, who can't talk to me, or I can't talk to them. So we are the people who are suffering. Nobody is listening to us. There is nothing that the international community is doing. There is nothing that the UN is doing. They can do a lot of stuff. They're not doing because they don't want to, the international community, they don't want to dent their relationship with India because India is a big market.
What do you think that the UN or the US or any of these other international bodies or other governments in the world should be doing?
They should be calling it it's a human rights violation, and it's an unlawful act. It's high time that they call a spade a spade. You can't use flowery language when people's basic human rights are violated. You can't use, oh, I will talk to Prime Minister Modi, or I would talk to the delegates from the Indian High Commission and all that. That's not going to do anything. You got to come out and say what it is. It is human rights violation. What's happening in Kashmir right now? It cannot get worse than that. 8 million people under curfew.
Let me ask you, Farooq, about one incident in particular.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe it was last week that a congressman in New York, Tom Suozzi, I believe his name is, he issued a statement about Kashmir, and it was a strong statement. And he called for the respect of the human rights for all people. And he spoke about how there's a threat to this entire region becoming unstable, especially in light of the fact that Pakistan, China, and India are all nuclear powers. And he called for peace and for calm and for this thing and for the respect for human rights. A couple of days after the statement was issued, he retracted the statement because he said he'd been approached by members of his constituency, Indian American members of his constituency, who had urged him to withdraw the statement and who had very vociferously, very, very strongly denounced him for having issued it and talking about terrorism in Kashmir and this thing, that thing, and talking about Pakistan being a hotbed of terrorism and what have you. Now, it came across my radar just the other day. Somebody put out a piece noting that the people that were behind the congressman being pressured to withdraw this statement were members of the Overseas Friends of the BJP, which is the international wing of the BJP, the ruling party in India.
Mhm.
as well as members of the RSS, which is this mother organization behind the BJP.
Correct.
What is your impression of that?
Well, that's what happens. That's what happened. There have been statements by a few people. There's a person from UK government who issued a very strong statement that Kashmiri people should be they should be allowed to decide their own fate, what they want to
George
do.
Galloway, if I'm not mistaken.
Mr. Reed, I don't remember the first name, from the opposition party in the UK government. I read it a couple of days ago. So there have been statements like that. But then, if you are issuing a statement and retracting it because you are coming under pressure, you have basically you accepted that there something wrong is happening, and then because there was pressure on you, if you don't retract that, maybe next time people are not going to vote for you. If you are retracting it thinking like that, then I can't say anything about that. Then you shouldn't have issued it at the first place.
As an Indian American, how would you like your own congressional representatives to act?
Well, they should talk about it. They should come out. Everybody. It's not about only the congressional leaders. Every human being living anywhere in the world at this point of time should come out and say that this is a human rights violation, what's happening in Kashmir. So that if it happens somewhere else, we got to set good precedents. We got to speak up against the human rights violations. If it's happening, if it was not Kashmir also, if it was happening anywhere else also, I should be the person speaking up against that. That's what, because we are human beings. We are not, we don't live in a jungle where anything happens there and nobody says anything. We are human beings.
Farooq, that reminds me of this principle, and I was reminded of it in conversation with another Kashmiri earlier today. This principle that was expressed by a pastor who was in Nazi Germany by the name of Martin Niemöller. Mm-hmm. And he expressed this idea that in poetry, that first they came for the socialists and I said nothing because I was not a socialist. And then they came for the trade unionists and I said nothing because I was not a trade unionist. And then they came for the Jews and I said nothing because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me and there was no one left to speak for me. And there's this idea that if we're not speaking on behalf of other people, if we're not raising our voices for those who don't have a voice and for those who can't speak for themselves, then at some point we might be in a position where there's nobody to raise a voice for us when we're at risk.
Exactly. What you narrated just now, it sums up the whole thing so beautifully. This is the crux of it. We got to speak for other people. There will be a time when somebody will have to speak for us. So if we don't speak at this point of time, at that later on, there will be nobody to speak for us. And we need to show that we are human beings. At this point of time, what is happening in Kashmir, you don't treat human beings like that. And every human being who is staying quiet, even if you are not saying anything, you are hurting. You are also hurting those people because you are not raising your voice against them. Right now you have social media. You don't need to go out and protest. You don't have to go out on the road to protest. You can just write a few lines. You can use these social media channels to actually at least say it, even if you don't want to go out and waste your time. You don't want to spend maybe an hour or two protesting on the road. You just during a bathroom break, during a lunch break, you get like 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, write a line. That's all we ask for. You will go to sleep better in the night because you will know that you did the right thing. You did the right thing. You spoke up for somebody who cannot speak. I know 8 million people right now cannot speak. So we have to speak for them.
I have two final questions for you, Farooq.
Yes.
First is, that Prime Minister Modi is going to be coming to Texas next month, and he is going to be attending a reception. He has done this on several occasions in the past. He'll be attending a reception at an auditorium where it will be crafted as a rock star reception, and it's being billed as a Howdy Modi event. And so my first question is, would you be one of the people in attendance there to say howdy to Modi when he visits Texas? My second question is, what do you think is the future of Kashmir, and how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I don't know whether I'll be in Texas. I would love to go. I would love to go confront him. I would love to raise my voice very peacefully. I'm not talking about anything which is violent by any nature. Very peacefully.
Let me
yes.
ask. As this reception is being hosted for Modi, would you agree that there is division within the Indian American community as far as support for him versus opposition to him?
Well, I would put it this way. Like, if I have to say, we will go back to India. If we talk about the people who are living in India at this point of time, there are a lot of people. I have seen posts on Twitter, on Facebook, people talking about Kashmir issue and saying it out loud and clear that what is happening in Kashmir is completely wrong. But the number of those people is that's a small number. The majority of people are actually saying this is a good thing. What is happening in Kashmir is good. So that holds true for the people, the Indian American community over here. It's the same. There are people who are saying this is completely wrong, but there are people who keep religion and who keep their patriotism, which is basically, I call it blind patriotism, ahead of humanity. So they actually support him. So I would just like to just talk about this blind patriotism. I call it blind patriotism. What it means to me is that there is a vast majority of people who, like, there have been my friends. I have had discussions with my own friends. And before we had this conversation, I completely thought about those people that they would never say anything about this, like this. So there is the huge amount of people who actually cannot digest the fact that their country can do anything wrong. The leaders, the government, they can do anything wrong. The moment you talk to them about that Modi government did anything wrong, it's not only Kashmir issue. We talk about lynching. We talk about the minorities, what is happening to minorities in India, not only Muslims, the other minorities also. They are not willing to accept it because they have this, they are blindly patriotic to the fact that India cannot do anything wrong. Same holds true for other countries also. All the right-wing parties are right-leaning people. They are blind patriots. They don't want to accept the fact that their country or the people who represent them, they can do anything wrong. And that, I think that is the problem. If people start to accept the fact that we are human beings, I am a human being. I have made so many mistakes in my life. I have made bad decisions. I took bad decisions which had bad consequences. Everybody does it in our day-to-day life, in our professional life, anything we do. So people don't actually, they're not willing to accept the fact that these people can also make mistakes. The policies that they make can be wrong. They are not willing to digest that fact. They're not willing to accept it. And I think that is the biggest problem. So we need to talk more about that. We have, for example, there was BJP was elected to run the Indian government as majority. So you voted for somebody that doesn't give that person a passport or a license that they can never make a mistake. They can still make mistakes. Their policies can be wrong. We need to object to those policies that they make, which are wrong. We need to support the right ones. I think people need to talk more about that. This is all over the world at this point of time. All the right-wing parties or right-leaning people. This is the problem. They don't, and this happens to my son. Like I have a 9-year-old son. I talk to him. He plays sports, so he plays tennis. So sometimes he just loses a couple of points, and then he gets really, like, he gets mad at himself. So I tell him that you are a human being. Doesn't matter how good you are, you're gonna make a mistake. You got to accept that I'm going to make a mistake. You got to accept that I'm going to lose sometime. So I talk to my 7-8-year-old child like that, but adults do not understand this. They think their country can never do anything wrong. Anything that happens that their country does is the best. Their country is the best. Everything. Of course, there has to be patriotism. You love your country, but you need to accept the mistakes. So.
Well, that makes me think of a couple of things, Farooq. One is, as you tell your son, making mistakes is natural, it's normal. I would even hypothesize that it's a good thing to make mistakes at some points, because if you're not failing now and then it's a sign that you're not even trying. In addition to that, what you said about this voting for representatives, and how it's not giving them a license to basically do whatever they want. It makes me think of, in America, where I've grown up, that the idea that was inculcated in me was that when we vote for a president or somebody like that, we're not voting for a king. We're voting for somebody who's bound by law and who is obligated to do all the things within the law. We're not voting to put somebody into a position of power where they can do anything they want at any time to anybody. So, but as we draw to a conclusion with our conversation, I do want to ask you, Farooq, what is your opinion? What are your thoughts about the future of Kashmir?
At this point of time, future is not looking, the near future is not looking very bright. I think this that the Indian government took, it's going to have grave consequences. I'm sure they're aware of it. So the near future is not pretty bright. But then Kashmiri people are not going to bow down. They will get up. They will speak up for themselves, and they will get their basic human rights, and they will get their rights back. So I think it's going to be this is going to be a long fight, but there is always light at the end of the tunnel. I see it positively that way, that there will be light at the end of the tunnel, and there will be a time when Kashmiri people will be asked, what do you want? I wish I'm alive at that point of time when that happens. That will be a dream come true when it happens in a democratic way, that people are asked what you want to do, and if at that point of time they want to be with India, if people want to be with India, that's great. So whatever people want, that that should happen, not what the Delhi-based government, what one person or two people or 10 people in the Indian government think. It shouldn't be like that. That's what happens in jungle. That doesn't happen in a democracy.
Well, I do hope that time does come soon, when somebody actually asks Kashmiris what they want, and that within both of our lifetimes that we see Kashmiris getting what they want for Kashmir. So Farooq Ahmad, I want to thank you for offering your time and for your willingness to sincerely express your thoughts, your opinions, your feelings about the issue in Kashmir.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate what you are doing. We need a lot more voices like you at this point of time, who are actually spending their time giving their platforms and voices to the people of Kashmir who cannot speak. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.